Okay. Hello, everyone on the live stream. You can hear me first. Hope you're all right. Thanks for joining us, if you're there at all. Okay. Just stand up. Okay, everybody, we're ready to get going. Shall I sit down? That's the official way of doing it. Music. Okay, turn the music off. Sorry. Thank you. That's all right. It's quite nice, actually. Yeah, thank you everybody for coming to the 10th Sheffield Content Club. That's the hashtag. I don't think I ever remember to say that, but if you want to talk about the events on Twitter, go for it. In a nice way, obviously. Only 5 stars. We have another couple of fantastic speakers this evening, but first I will take you through what Sheffield Content Club is. Is there anyone here who's not been before? Oh, wow, okay, good. That's amazing. So these are the people that make it happen. So Very Meta is my freelance content design company, copywriting company. Little Masters is Tom and his team who help organize the events. John Street Kitchen is where you are. Lovely, lovely toasties, etc. Feel free to go to the bar and buy stuff and say thank you. That's one way of saying thank you. Just say it in person if you want as well. And Joe is our amazing photographer who always gives his time up, and we really appreciate it. So, yep. Fires and toilets. 2 doors there are where to go for fire emergencies. That one there and that one there. That's what they're called. And if you need a different type of emergency, then the toilets are all the way at the back there. We have a code of conduct that we use for the events. This is Sheffield Digital's code of conduct. Anyone can use this. So if you have an event yourself or of any kind, really, then you can kind of point people towards this or just copy and paste it and let Sheffield Digital know and stick it on your own website. But this is just kind of the rules and regulations. So if anything happens or if anyone says something to you tonight that you're not happy with or not comfortable with, you can check the code of conduct and speak to me or whatever you need to do. But that's there if you want to check it at any point. And this is kind of what it's all about. So for those of you who are new, kind of this is number 10. So it's actually like 4 years ago that the first one, 4 years ago, the first Sheffield Content Club. So I was working for Sheffield Digital. I was freelancing for them, one of my first freelance clients. Saw that there were loads of tech meetups and thought there's a bit of a gap there for people who make stuff that is not less techy, but is writing, designers, illustrators, podcasters, that kind of person. So that was the idea, and that's why this is not just for copywriters, which is what I do. It's kind of for anyone who kind of makes stuff. And really the idea is really simple, is to come and learn stuff. So we're going to hear from a couple of speakers to share stuff. So it'd be great if you shared stuff with each other, or if you want to ask questions, whatever you want to do. And make new pals. We know that there are people who've been and gone away and done projects and got to know people through the Content Club, which is great. So feel free to stay around afterwards. I haven't done this yet. Should have done this. Too busy setting up the text, sorry. I will do, though, before the end. So we'll have, over in the corner there, we'll have these two Post-its. So one will say, I can offer, and one will say, I'm looking for. There'll be some other Post-its, and you can answer those statements. So if you want to, if you're planning to, you're doing a project and you want someone to join in, or you're looking for a job or freelance work, whatever it might be, then you can put that down on here. Or if you just want to tell people what your skills are, you can do that too. Okay, enough of me. So our two speakers this evening are Phil Vintin and Ellen Beardsmore. We're really grateful for them for giving up their time and coming to speak to us. And where are they? Oh, okay, yeah. I thought you were over there a minute ago. And I didn't see you come over. I thought you'd escaped. So Ellen is going to be the first person to talk, and I would love you to give her the biggest round of applause possible.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me. I'm very, very nervous. This is my first ever presentation in front of adults, so bear with me. I'm much more confident and comfortable when it comes to writing than I am talking. I'm going to talk a little bit about me, a little bit about journalism, and a little bit about press releases, which is just part of what I do now that I've got my own business. There's me again. So I became a journalist when I was 19, and really I grew up in journalism, which is quite the experience. And it goes without saying that I was really, really, really rubbish when I first started. They would send me out on door knocks, and my knees had been knocking harder than my actual knock on the door. My first news editor used to send me stories back over and over again until I got them right. It was a really, really tough 6 months, but I learned such a lot. It was a massive learning curve, and I really kind of put that as to how I got to where I am today, to be honest with you. Once I became a senior journalist, I did kind of get handed the council specialism on the paper that I was working on at the time. It was very much just, this is yours now, you deal with it. But luckily, I did get quite into it. And one of the big stories that I broke at the time was about a mayor in a small town who was accused of bullying some constituents to sell some land to Aldi, if I remember correctly. Obviously, it was quite the scandal at the time, and we got that on the front page as an exclusive. And after that, I really got into local politics and local journalism, and found that it was something that could be quite addictive, and you made a difference as well. The pictures on this slide here, that's me as a very fresh-faced, about 21-year-old, I think, at the Derbyshire Times. That's the only non-drunk picture I could find of me around that time. And that's just some of the cuttings that I've got in my spare bedroom. So I've got 2 drawers full of newspapers from over the years that I just can't bear to throw away, but I probably should. The great thing about journalism, or what used to be the great thing about journalism, was walk-ins. So this is a photograph of a lovely local man who brought in a cucumber shaped like a dolphin. And I'm sure you'll all admit it does look exactly like a dolphin. Somehow I managed to write 500 words about this cucumber-shaped dolphin, which is a good preparation for copywriting about finance. And it went on page 3, and it got picked up by quite a few of the national papers as well. Walk-ins are a dying art, really. You don't really get people turning up to the front door of a newspaper office anymore with a crazy story. But I was chatting about it at the weekend to some of my journalism pals, and there really have been some crazy ones out there. So my friend Hannah had somebody turn up with an unexploded World War II bomb they'd found. And instead of going to the police or an emergency services or anybody really, he turned up to the local newspaper office with it, and they then had to call emergency services. My friend Stuart had a man turned up in a truck, and he'd driven across Europe in this truck and found there was a duck stuck in the truck. So again, turned up to the local newspaper officers for them to take photographs of this duck, which again made it onto the front page and again went national. So they really were part of the joy of being a local journalist, and sadly they aren't really a thing anymore. But there is a fantastic book coming out, I think next year, written by Alex Morrison on Twitter, and that's going to be a really good look at all the different walk-ins people used to get over the years. Now, I would always say the best interviews I've done are just ordinary people with extraordinary stories to tell, but people always ask you which famous people have you interviewed, so I thought I'd put a few of them in there. Gordon Brown, who I can't believe was the last Labour Prime Minister we've ever had. When I interviewed him, it was a last-minute thing that I was told about, and I got off the train in Wakefield, and I had to run across Wakefield. Unfortunately, I dropped some egg on my shirt, so I interviewed a Prime Minister with egg all down my shirt. He was very kind, didn't mention it. But it was very, very embarrassing at the time. But he was lovely. Paul Hollywood, again, a massive fan of Paul Hollywood, so that was lovely to be able to interview him. He was absolute charm personified. I've also interviewed Mary Berry. She was less pleased with me, I think, but I can talk about that to you if you're interested later on. And I haven't interviewed Simon Cowell, but I have interviewed Chico. Does anyone remember or know Chico? He was very famous at the time for It's Chico Time. I couldn't find a picture of him anywhere, even on Shutterstock, so that's why there's a picture of Simon Cowell on there instead. Now, just by good fortune, really, when I joined newspapers, it was really the start of kind of a digital transformation of news. So it's hard to believe now, but back in the day, almost everyone would buy a copy of a physical newspaper and read it. And we just got a website when I started as a trainee journalist. And you might update that once a day, possibly, if you remembered to. And now, of course, it's constant updates, daily updates, monthly updates, hourly updates, second-by-second updates of big political issues, and, of course, Twitter, which Phil's going to talk a little bit more about shortly. So these are just some stats about how some of the biggest papers have changed in terms of their readership in that time. And obviously local newspapers have had to adapt in the same way to the change in readership and how people read stuff online, but we haven't had the same resources in local journalism. So the photograph is from the Tour de France, which came to Sheffield a few years ago. I don't know if anyone was here for that at the time. It was amazing. Again, I was handed the Tour de France specialism at the start. I managed to get my bike nicked 3 days before the Tour de France, so that was good going. But I was sent to Bradfield for the actual day and told to tweet it live, video it live, get everything out there. If you've ever been to Bradfield, you will know there is no phone signal to be had at all, so it was completely impossible. But it was really good fun, and just another indication of how local newspapers have to do everything now for all purposes, often without the right kit. Another good thing about digital transformation in the press is how front pages, which might normally be seen by 3,000, 4,000 people, can now be seen by a global audience. So I've just put a couple here on this slide that I did when I was editor of the Sheffield Telegraph. The Litter and Endcliffe Park one, again, you might have seen, that went bonkers and I've absolutely no idea why. I think it just chimed well with what was happening at the time post-COVID. But it's had something like 1.6 million views globally, and I had people from America commenting on it, which is just insane, and Australia and beyond that. The HS2 story, again, I think that was a result of summing up the mood of the city at the time, which is something that I tried to do when I was the editor. Rather than just, seeking stories, it was about asking how the city felt about things as a collective, and trying in some ways to get that on the front page, which is not something you always get right every week. And then in February this year, I took redundancy from my job, which was a massive roller coaster. I've always been a journalist, and it was quite a lurch to leave, something I thought about long and hard before I did it. But now I've got my own business, Edit Sheffield. So I've been super, super lucky to work with some amazing, very Sheffield-based clients already. That includes lots of food and drink businesses, and food and drink is really my hobby, I suppose, eating and drinking. I was a food and drink reporter, so I absolutely love anything to do with sausages, coffees, brunches, get me in there, love that. The Migration Matters Festival, which is an amazing arts celebration that happens every year. I didn't really know anything about it until I was a marketing manager for it this year, but it really is incredible. It's going to get bigger and bigger every year. And then charities and social enterprises like Libraries Hope, which literally gives homeless people a job to help make their artisan soaps. So that's just some of the clients that I've worked with so far. And they've all got one thing in common, is that they've got a great story. And I hadn't planned the business that way, but that just seems to be how it's panning out, that I'm working on stories still and still treating them a little bit like I did as a journalist. Now, I want to talk about this, and I'm aware that some people here will write press releases as part of their job, and they've probably got more expertise than me when it comes to massive press campaigns and social media. But this is from a journalist point of view. So the biggest question I get asked by businesses and by writers as well who work for agencies and businesses is how to write a press release. The thing when you're a journalist is you will get so many emails and so many press releases, at least 1,000 a week, I would say. When I was managing a team that worked across 3 or 4 different newspapers, I managed all the email accounts of those newspapers simultaneously. I used to dream about press releases and emails. And I would say you've got 10, 20 seconds, maybe, if you're lucky, to get them to keep that email, not delete it. It's really, really tough. So these are just some tips that I've put together, and I've written a blog about it for my website in more detail, just to help people, if they're interested, if they want to look into it, about writing a press release. So focusing on the reader rather than focusing on the business or the organisation that you're writing about. Summarising the story, perhaps in the way you might tell somebody down the pub or here, if you had one sentence to go at. Making it relevant and making it right. You wouldn't believe how many emails I've had that spell my name incorrectly, and my name is not difficult to spell. I've had Elton, Eileen, Elaine, literally every connotation of Ellen you can imagine. So please spell the reporter's name right if you're sending them an email. And be visual. Don't promise to send pictures. Send them with bonus points for video clips, because video is obviously king now for local journalists as well as everything else. Thank you very much for having me. And before I get a gin, are there any questions?
Nice. You said classic university pyramid structure. I've had that one before.
Oh, okay. That's my fault. So I teach some journalist students at the University of Hallam. And that's something we teach to them at the very beginning when they're starting to write, to help them structure their story. So when you're writing a press release, you do it in a similar way. So you get the most important facts at the top of the story, and then you work your way down. So if your story gets cut from the bottom, the least important information gets cut. So that's the way we teach student journalists. That's the way I learn to write and the way that journalists tend to write as well. Unless you've got a really in-depth feature or interview with somebody. If you're writing a basic news story, that's the structure that you'll try and follow. It just means you're getting the best information at the top. And a lot of press releases from professional PR agencies have the information at the bottom. And if your journalist is time pressed and they've got 10 seconds to read the email, they're not going to see it. So it's best to get that right at the top. And obviously in the headline, in the subject line as well.
Any more questions? Yeah.
Chasing up on press releases or sending them again if not heard back anything?
It's a very good question. It's really irritating when you're a journalist to have that done, but sometimes I just genuinely hadn't had a chance to reply to it and I was saving it, so I would reply and say, yeah, I'm just waiting to get a space for it or waiting until I get a chance to use it. I think yes, as long as you're polite and don't kind of say, why haven't you used this? Because journalists have, like I said, hundreds of press releases coming in every single day. As long as you're polite about it and you understand they might not reply, I would say yes. I do that now when I'm sending things out. And often it's because the person's on holiday or, making sure they've got it, or should I send it to somebody else in the team? So yeah, sometimes it is worth chasing it up, definitely. But don't plague them.
No.
We get people who ring up every day and you'll be like, we're not going to use it. Yeah.
Any more questions? I have one.
Okay.
You mentioned safe redundancy.
Yes.
I've been made redundant twice.
Oh.
Good, isn't it? What were your thought processes around setting up the business yourself, and maybe if you're willing to share any sort of like any of the practical things that you had to go through to take that step to sort of starting your own thing?
Yeah, sure. Like I said, it was, as you know, it's quite an emotional experience, isn't it? And you do question a lot of things about yourself. I didn't know what day it was for a while. I didn't have a deadline to work to, and I'd always had one in my life. So it felt very, very strange to start a week and not have Wednesday deadline hanging over me for the Telegraph. I was really lucky that I had a couple of freelance friends who helped me out, and they both do similar things. One of them, Rachel, who actually referred me on for this talk. And they were so helpful. We'd have coffees and they'd tell me all about how to get set up as a business, how to do invoices, things like that. And once you've done it a couple of times, it's super easy. But just reaching out to those people who already do it and asking them how they do it, I found to be incredibly useful. And if I can do it after being, employed by one company for 15 years, I think anybody can do it, really. So, and the reason why I wanted to do it was I've always wanted to have my own business. I would have loved to have had a restaurant or been a chef, but I don't have the skills to do that. So I thought I'll try and do something with writing instead. I did kind of think, there's a little bit of work out there, there's a little bit of demand, but I've been blown away by how much work has actually come my way already. So I'm really grateful for that and really glad I did it. I think I should have done it a long time ago.
Yeah.
If there was one part of what you do regularly for work that you could never do again,
Yeah.
what would it be?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Can I have that as a question I ask everybody?
Let me think.
Does everyone know what that was?
It's a really, really good question. I do have to write about personal finance quite a bit. And I am learning a lot about personal finance, which is good. It is very difficult. And I have to do a lot of research on those topics. I never want to read the T&Cs of a bank account ever again. That would be great. I wouldn't have to do that again. Thanks.
Any more questions? Yeah.
So, following on from writing about finance, so I often have to write news stories about, so I work in the management school, Sheffield Uni.
Oh, great.
So I often have to write news stories about like business stuff or accounting stuff that people are researching. How do you find that balance between not sort of dumbing down research, but equally making it accessible to the general public who haven't spent all the life researching?
Well, I think what you've got to bear in mind is that the general public will probably not know anything about the subject you're talking about. So I think you'd have to go quite far to be too far dumbing it down. We'd always say with topics from the university in particular, you do have to explain to somebody, I don't have any knowledge of particle physics or any knowledge of management school. So, I think it's fine to explain things in simple, plain English. And I would encourage anyone sending a press release also to avoid jargon, avoid putting in, people's incredibly long job titles if they're not relevant and all the rest of it. Try and make it so it makes sense to anybody. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a good thing. And hopefully the academics that you work with will understand that you are the person who's explaining their work to the general public. So I think that's fine to do. Unless they want to aim at a specific journal or a trade specialist or something. I think you need to bring it down to a level that everyone can understand. Otherwise, the journalist's going to think, I don't know what that is, and delete it.
Any more for any more? Great.
Thank you.
Thanks,
You.
Helen.
I meant to say as well, I am really new to self-employment, so if anyone ever wants to have a chat or a catch-up or step on their own, I'm more than happy to talk or have a coffee anytime. So thank you very much for having me.
I've got a very important question. Does anyone have a MacBook charger? Like a USB-C one? You have? Would you mind if I borrowed it, just in case? I think we'll be all right, but you know, I would lovely live streamers who are sat watching me now thinking, what an idiot. You may also be thinking that, but I don't want the battery to go out on them.
I like the game you're playing. You're really flipping a coin there. Is it not going on?
Well, I mean, it's 20%, but you never know, do you?
Yes.
Magic, thank you. It's all part of the exciting live show. Thank you. Okay, right. Sorry, Phil. Bought you a bit of time. No, it's got to go now. Right, our second speaker. Everyone, give a huge round of applause, please. Oh, you can. Do you need to go to the toilet? Oh, yeah, of course you can.
I wasn't just messing.
I thought it was a joke. So no one noticed. That's fine. Well, what should we do? We'll know what Phil's up to. Oh yeah, that's a great idea. So we've, for the first time ever, we've got our speakers for next month lined up, and Tom has done all the arranging of it. So he's going to shout their names out right now.
So we've got Ollie Ratcliffe from Yorkshire Tea, essentially head of marketing, Yorkshire Tea, and then we've got Thierry, who's said that I'm not going to say, formerly of Rising Seven and out Journey Further, talking about, I don't know yet, but yeah, it's coming. And that's us two.
That's great.
In December as well.
Yep. So we have speakers in December. If anyone wants to speak in the future, then just come and let us know. And I know I say this every month, but we will do the website properly. And the newsletter. That's the other thing. So we found out this very week that no one's been getting our newsletter for the last 6 months. So I used to almost entirely run this entire thing just with the mailing list, and I used to get like 80% open and stuff like that because people like it. So I was surprised to find out that we'd not been sending emails to anyone. I've been sending them, don't get me wrong, but they've not been going anywhere. So well done, everybody, for coming to these events without knowing about them. It's fantastic. All good, Phil?
Yeah, it's got one come from the side rather than the middle, so it's like an entrance.
Are you talking about the toilet situation or this? Fantastic. Everyone give Phil a big round of applause.
That's my opening intro. I thought I'd start with that. Ellen thought she was nervous. I am about 15 times more nervous. So, and that's my support dog. So if I get too nervous, come here then. Let him go, Ellen. That's for cuteness, just in case it all goes wrong. Right, so my name's Phil. I'm here to talk to you about Help Sheffield, but that's my personal slogan. I thought I'd start with that so you give me a bit of an allowance if it goes pear-shaped. Did you say left and right? Oh yeah, there you go. So, has anybody in this room not witnessed that logo on Twitter? Oh, you've done well. Are you on Twitter? But you've never seen that logo on Twitter? Oh, wow. I thought I was more annoying than I actually appear to be. So, Help Sheffield. So, it's a Twitter account. So, the basic premise is to help Sheffield, anyone within the city, with whatever they want. And the logo was designed by my friend there, Mr. Matt Bell, the name at the top. So that's what it is. So the idea, obviously I've got a few followers, which are mainly Sheffield-based. And it's hopefully described to you there what it actually does. So answering questions about anything you may have to do with Sheffield, and I either answer the questions that anybody puts into me, or I retweet those questions and those followers then answer them. I'm only actually here under duress because Ian asked me. So if I'm not very good at this, we'll get better as we go along. So, anybody any ideas what these four things have in common?
I only designed one of the websites.
There's what, sorry?
I only designed one website.
Which one? The Boardfield. I like the Boardfield website. It's all right. It does its job, which is what a website should do, I believe. So, this is basically the origin story of the Help Sheffield Twitter account. So I set up my own It's not bad. Nothing happened in the Bodefield. So I set up my own personal Twitter account, which is just @PhilVintin. And one Saturday afternoon, I got a tweet that I just saw as I was strolling through, and it just said, "Oh, I'm at a wedding." So S6 Photography, we're at a wedding at the City Hall, Town Hall in Sheffield, and said that they'd arranged at the wedding, they'd arranged for a harpist to drive from Manchester to come to Sheffield to play at a wedding. Unfortunately, there was snow on the Peak District, so that particular musician wasn't able to attend. So I retweeted it. Absolutely nothing happened. So I thought, right, I'll copy that and I'll put it onto my Facebook. And I've got a friend who's into amateur dramatics. Oh, Bernie, shut up. A friend was into amateur dramatics, and she found someone who was a cello player. That's a cello. It looks a bit fat because I've extended it badly on the picture, but it is actually meant to be a cello. So I got the cello player to come from Chesterfield and basically save the wedding. Well, not quite, but maybe. And 3 days later, we were sat in the Bodefield, me and a friend of mine, and we came up with the idea, wouldn't it be a good idea if there's something local where someone could ask any question on Twitter for something to help them in Sheffield? So it could be absolutely anything. So I know at the time, I don't think it's as popular as it used to be. There used to be a hashtag #AskTwitter that a lot of people used to use, and that was around the world. But I thought we'd do something more local. So with the help of my friend who designed the logo there, and with a friend at the time who the idea it was, we set up the Help Sheffield Twitter account. My friend lasted 3 weeks doing that. I've been doing it for nearly 10 years. So careful what you start. So it's only on Twitter at the moment. I think it probably will only remain on Twitter. The main reason being that these 3 products do not work for the setup of the Help Sheffield system. So basically, when a tweet comes in, as I say, I'll answer the question or I'll retweet it. The problem with that is that Instagram, where everyone needs to put a picture on there. And there's not always a picture for someone who's got an issue or question or query. Facebook algorithms just do not work for Help Sheffield at all. It basically gets rid of everything that you want and hides them and sends them to someone else and does what it does in its sneaky meta kind of way. And TikTok hadn't been invented by the time that we started on Twitter. So this was the plan when we started. So the plan on day one was nothing at all. It's just an idea to try and help the people of Sheffield with whatever that might be. Oh, come on. So, well, he's seen some food and he's off. He's the greediest dog in the world. So the caption there says, I do. I think a lot of people think that Help Sheffield is actually a lot of people, but it's just me and an iPhone. And has been for the last 10 years of basically retweeting, answering any questions that I can find. So I do a lot of work with different charities, so we'll try and find, it could be absolutely anything, but try and find help for someone who needs a musician, it might be help for someone who needs to, anything really. Musicians do come up quite a lot though. Then we've got tourists, got a lot of people coming to Sheffield and asking for various bars, restaurants, theatres. So I do have connections with quite a lot of local accounts that I'd send to signpost people to. One of the most popular things that we ever have, and which will happen very soon, is lost pets. So this one might go missing, and I'll probably tweet up to find my own dog if he carries on barking. I don't even know what that picture is. And I also try and promote lots of Sheffield events. So basically, I think the city of Sheffield really struggles with the lack of trying to promote itself. I don't know if anybody would agree with that, but I think it's absolutely shit at it. So basically, what I've tried to do with the Help Sheffield account is promote lots of different things. So I use hashtags, I use Chef events, Chef jobs, and try and basically do positive things for the city. I think most of the time, I do get quite a bit of grief, but I find that Twitter is much more friendly and amenable than your Facebook and all that kind of thing that puts stuff out there. So that's the kind of things that we do. I always say we. For some reason, when I started Help Sheffield, I started doing it in the third person, made it sound like there was loads of us. And then over time, I think people have just really found me out, and it's just me and my sarcastic nature filling in the gaps there. Why do I do it? I've had 4 free meals in 10 years. So that's one of the reasons. I would like to go around to places when they have new openings and basically let them feed me and I'll take photos and do that kind of thing. But no one seemed really keen. I had a lovely meal at Coast to Coast at Centertainment. I had one at Endcliffe Park. Someone bought me a chocolate bar and sent me a card in the post that I have no idea who it was. I don't know how it got to me, but that arrived. But basically, I do it for love of the city of Sheffield. I've got no idea why I do it. It's just entertainment. It keeps me busy. So, stories, things that have happened to help Sheffield over the years, and there are obviously many more of these, but these are the ones that stick out in my mind. Shut up. So the first one, the very first question that anybody asked of Help Sheffield was a man who I think, it was definitely a man, he was a complete man. The first question was, can you find me a clothing company that is based and branded in Sheffield and also makes its clothes within the city? And I just straight away put Rab, and then he gave me a big diatribe of why it wasn't Rab, because they'd recently moved to China. So I went back and researched and found the other answer, which is Buffalo, which is still made on Bodefield Road up in, I don't know what that is, Nether Edge, Healy kind of way. So that was the very first story, or the very first interaction I had with the public on the platform. The second picture there is, I get a lot of questions that are people just being silly, just having a laugh and trying to entertain themselves. Does anybody recognise that building? Do you recognise that building? It is a brothel, you are correct. So one of the questions that I got asked early doors was how to set up a brothel in Sheffield. That is the brothel off the Channel 4 documentary, The Man Went Swimming in Custard, if anybody's ever seen it. If you've not seen the brothel Channel 4 documentary about that...
City sauna.
City sauna, yeah. It's derelict now. Such a shame. Made great telly. Apparently it's really good. Never seen it. Books for Good Causes is one of the main charities that I sort of help out with. If anybody's never heard of them, they're trying to get people in the city of Sheffield basically reading. So anybody who's got any books to donate, if you donate to them to Books for Good Causes, they have various book sales at various venues, and they, as they suggest, give all their money to charities and the like. It's a woman called Jill. She's absolutely lovely, but slightly bonkers. And the one story that I think got most traction than anybody else was a former Sheffield resident who now lives in the US of A, and they put out a tweet saying, I forgot my mum's birthday, and it's tomorrow, so I don't think I'm going to get a card to her in time. I would send her a digital one, but I think that's a bit rubbish. So can anybody actually get a card to my mum in Sheffield? So the tweet went out, I shared it. I don't even know the man's name, a man called Bob, lived around the corner, went and bought the card, faked the woman's signature, faked the woman's greeting, and delivered it, took photos, sent it to me. I put it all back on Twitter, and the Sheffield Star put a thing of how nice Sheffield people are, basically. I think, generally speaking, they are. Oh, shut up. Frequently asked questions. This should actually be, basically, I'm going to change this to frequently given answers, because no one's ever asked me these questions, but I think all frequently asked questions should be called frequently given answers. But it's what you want to tell people rather than what you want people to ask you. So I think it's a lie in itself. So basically, I retweet absolutely everything, or I answer it if I can, unless it's completely ludicrous. And the most commonly asked question I get is, how many hours a day do you spend doing this? It could possibly take me as little as 5 minutes if I just respond to the things that are there, or I can spend 3 hours walking through and doing bits and bobs. As I mentioned before, I try to promote particular things within Sheffield. I use various hashtags, Chef Events, Chef Kids, Chef Jobs, and try and get the word out there about what's going on in the city. One of the other things that I must have spent about 47 weeks over 10 years doing is creating Twitter lists. So if you've ever got a question, you're looking for someone in Sheffield, be it graphic designers, be it, in fact, I haven't got a copywriter Twitter list, but I need one, or be it musicians, artists, band promoters, venues that do pub quizzes, all that sort of things. I think I've got like 200 Twitter lists on the Help Sheffield account that have got mainly local do-flops in there, local accounts under those categories. And I was once declared the 10th most influential Twitter account in Sheffield, which I thought was quite good, considering that I'm one person and a phone, and it was behind like Sheffield City Hall and loads of things that have got loads of money. I can't remember what I've done. Next slide. Other plans. So that's the website. I've got a website that features the podcast that I do related to Help Sheffield. So the main idea of the podcast is anyone in Sheffield is doing anything helpful, anything good, be it a charity, be it, I don't know, anything you like, as long as it's a positive thing, then I've got a podcast that I put up on the website. I also do a blog, but I don't blog very much. If anyone wants to put a blog on there, as long as it's got some sort of vague Sheffield link to it, i.e. you live in Sheffield, that'll do, then I'll take it. Clothing. It's good when you do things drunk, isn't it? Yeah, I once planned to do some clothing, but the designer who designed the... shut up, dog. Did the logo has taken about 4 years to actually design me a piece of clothing so that I can sell it, but that's not really working. And then the other thing, I've also set up in the last year or so Sheffield Socials, which is basically a no agenda meetup for people to come and go to the pub basically and chat and talk about whatever. It's completely not businessy. I think it's sort of a reaction to lockdown where people were sat at home going, I've got no friends and things like that. So I thought I'd set something up. And the next one of those is on the 10th of November, the Dog and Partridge, which is on Trippett Lane, maybe, hopefully. That's my shizzle done. Thanks. Any questions? It got better, didn't it? Helen.
I completely agree that Sheffield is not very good at celebrating itself. But what do you think should be done to improve that?
Well, there was a movement, wasn't there, about the Sheffield Collective to get together and try and organise people from different areas trying to do the same thing. But I think it all got a bit high level. Everyone was from the council and they just spoke to themselves and they just sat in a room messing about. I think there needs to be a big investment in. We've got too many channels to promote too many things, I think. It's probably the same for many other cities, but we haven't got a dominant channel. So Welcome to Sheffield's quite good. Our Favourite Places is quite good. If you've not heard of those, have a look. But I don't think there's anything that everybody looks at the same thing. There's no really good calendar of events. There's nowhere to just go, I want to know what's going on in Sheffield tonight. There's no really good place for that, I don't feel. There's bits and bobs all over the place, but there's nothing sort of centralised, and I think it could do with bringing together. I've tried to do it sort of in a Twitter sense, but because I'm not on any of the platforms, I don't think I'm really quite cutting through on that level.
Any more questions? I have one. 10 years you've been doing it?
Nearly, yes.
I reckon most people who are setting up something like this today would call it a side hustle or have some sort of monetization in mind, but it seems like you never really wanted to do that beyond the merch. So have you ever considered trying to turn this into a business, basically?
Yes, but I don't want to change the whole environment that I've created. I don't want to suddenly become Mr. Money Grabber because of it.
Why would you become?
I feel like it's disingenuous. I've purely set it up just to be a helpful thing, and then if I think suddenly I start going, right, I'm going to do some promotions for this, that, and the other. I think if I can do it in the right way and it's subtle and don't take over the rest of the entire thing, then I'll be quite happy to do that. But I'm quite conscious of that. Everyone that I tweet to and a lot of people who reply seem to think they've got some control over the Twitter thing, and I think they think I'm a business, or they think I'm a charity, or they think I work for the council, none of which is true. So I don't want to sort of change that environment by making it a profitable thing. But if anyone wants to give me money, there is a Ko-fi on the Twitter account, so if you want to go to that and donate, then you can. So that's how I started doing it. In 3 months, I've earned about 100 quid, which was mostly from one bloke who I'd do his jazz sessions up at the Lescar. Any other questions? Helen again.
What's the weirdest thing you've ever been asked?
Apart from setting up a brothel.
Apart from the sauna and
I get all sorts. I get what people tend to do though is if it's weird, they send me a private message and go, "Can you promote this?" I'm like, "No, get it out there. Let's just see how weird this can be." I don't get too many that weird. That's probably why that's stuck in my mind. I do get the occasional, "Can you find me someone, like a partner?" And I'm like, it's not really my job. And I think that could end up all sorts of weird. So, yeah. Most people on Twitter I find are quite nice. You get the odd Sheffield dumbed downers and people who hate Sheffield and still live here and still tweet me. It's like, I don't know what your point is. But generally people are quite nice and generally sensible. Joe had a question.
Yeah, so if this is not profitable, what do you do to make money? Like, what's your actual job?
What's my job?
Yeah.
I
You're doing something that seems like you've got to spend a lot of time doing this because the replies are quite quick. You must have a job, I'm assuming, that gives you the allowance of time going and stuff like that.
They're not quick during the hours of 9:30 till 2:30, Monday to Friday. Because I wrestle kids that aren't in full-time education and get shoes thrown at my head and spat at and things like that. So, yeah, that's my day job. Did you have a question? Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, you said that you feel like you've created a nice community, which is lovely. But it's funny because I don't tweet very much because I'm frightened. And the idea of people messaging me constantly, I can think of create things that are worse. But you obviously have a lovely relationship with people. How have you done that? How have you created that?
I think I'm not really me on Twitter. I'm very sort of generally kind and polite and nice and helpful, which is not really my general demeanour. I have recently started getting a bit more bullshit with people who are basically being idiots. But I think the fact that the general idea of it is to be helpful, I think people don't just come up and just give me grief. I've had to block a few racists and annoying people and whatever, but it's not that many at all. Actually, you'd be quite surprised. They'll do it indirectly. If I tweet something, I might get some negative responses back, but people don't generally send messages to me that are arsey.
Anyone? Yeah.
It's a bit of a kind of classic social media question, but like 10 years is a long time and you're not on there to make money or anything like that from what you said. What does best that you see on there, like what posts, what stuff, questions come up that you think, wow, like thousands, hundreds of thousands of...
Do you mean what sort of goes viral or whatever?
Yeah.
For me, not a lot, if I'm honest. I generally get blunt response. I generally get the responses that I request for the question that I ask. It doesn't really. People don't share anything. People are quite happy with their own voice, as I am now becoming. So when you put a question out there, if they've got the answer, they'll give you the answer. They don't generally retweet it. The things that gets most traction, generally speaking, although less so because I've got one particular individual who likes to copy me into every missing dog and every missing cat in Sheffield, and I think people have got really bored of it. But when it started off, I think the thing that did get most traction was missing pets, generally speaking. I'm racking my brain for something that's gone crazy, but if I put something controversial on, which is very rare, like if I put something, I do surveys every now and again just to sort of feel the mood of the city. If I put something on there that people don't like, that causes a bit of a kickback. But yeah, generally don't get the grief or the traction. You'd be surprised. I've got nearly 28,000 followers who are all local, and yet the engagement isn't as big as you might think. I think people often think that I get overrun, but I really don't. James.
Are you ever tempted to reply to anyone and say, just fucking Google it?
Yes.
I mean that in a semi-serious way, because it must get quite frustrating at times, people asking stuff that you think it would be easy for you to just go find this information.
But if I retweet it, I can almost guarantee that someone will say, just fucking Google it. So I don't have to be that person. I can just skip out the middleman and go, there you go, that's your job. But the answer to that is, Google isn't always the answer to the question, I don't find. I find quick responses from people on the ground are much more useful than putting it into, I don't know, wherever it is, the Silicon Valley, wherever Google live. So actually, I think that it's not always the answer. I think you might get the answer, but you might not get the answer. As opposed to someone who's been to that pub the week before, Google might tell you some absolute crap because it's 3 weeks out of date.
And that's it. Thanks, Phil. That went all right.
Got better, didn't it?
Did you know that you got another slide?
I've got loads of slides.
All right, fair enough.
Another sort I pushed along.
All right. This all looks brilliant. This is all the good stuff. There we go. So that's us on Twitter. If you would like to go and follow the Twitter account, it's also on Instagram. That's where we are everywhere. The newsletter is a good thing to look at too, because that's what we're going to when the website exists in a better format, then it will be effectively like a newsletter as well. As in, we'll be sending stuff other than just there's an event to go to. And I think that's it. Thank you all for coming. I'll just do the post-it notes things, the I can offer stuff. I'll put those in the corner if people want to do that. We are earlier than usual, so 35 minutes to go before closing time. Feel free to go and get yourself another drink, mingle, schmooze, whatever you want to call it. And thanks very much for coming. Thanks, live streamers. I'm going to turn you off now.
or did it land to tackle them only Sheffield United? So tweets like